Hey everyone, welcome. So my name is Connie Henshaw and I will be moderating tonight. Our topic is music as a pathway to personal healing and community healing. So we're gonna have to break that down a little bit probably, even for myself. But the topic of healing personally through music and as a community has been something that's kind of been on my brain for like the past 2 years, as my wife and I started a band called Baer and the Lady and another project called Mental Space. And it kind of began as a personal healing project to heal from traumas that we faced, dealing with family that are not okay with the LGBT thing, so losing family. We dealt with grief of losing loved ones to war and losing loved ones to cancer, all kind of all at once. So we kind of turned to like the only thing we knew, which was music, and decided to put ourselves out there into the world. And I personally experienced like an intense healing just from the process of that and learning to just like get out in front of the microphone. So it just kind of brings up this topic for me of, well, what is healing really? You know, we use that word like all the time. So what is it really? So I hope we can break that down a little bit. But I also am interested as well because it brings up like this cool topic of like, well, if music is really that powerful, right? Could we use music as a way to heal the communal traumas that we have? So the traumas that we have, that we deal with every day, dealing with racism, dealing with the past histories of our communities, dealing with, man, it's endless. We could go on and on, right? But so I'm so excited to have this panel here because I feel like you all might have some answers for me to move in the future.
Certainly some content.
Yeah, certainly some content or things to think on. So I'm going to kind of let the panel introduce themselves here so you can speak on what background you're coming from. But introduce yourself, and instead of just being like, all right, I'm going to read my resume here, right? Which is cool too. I wanted y'all to answer the question, what is some work that you have done that you are proud of? And what work are you excited about now?
Cool.
You want to start, Aaron?
Sure.
All right. Oh, you got a microphone.
Yeah,
Cool.
I can use this one over here.
All right.
All right. My name is Aaron Colverson. I'm a second-year PhD student at the University of Florida, and I'm studying a field called ethnomusicology. It's a long word, a lot of syllables, and I guess the best way to boil it down is to say that it's cultural anthropology of music. Sorry to add more syllables, but hopefully that throws in some more meaning for you. So I'm also doing some research with a neuroscientist. I'm really interested in biology and culture when it comes to music and musical experience. So I just finished my master's degree 2 years ago and started up my PhD work in this field. And the questions that I was looking at is what role does music play in facilitating people to be social with one another? And we designed a protocol, gathered some data, and so in terms of work experience, I have quite a bit now under my belt as to how to design a research study with music and social engagement. And empathy was a key question there. We were trying to understand what is it about music that might facilitate people to be empathetic with one another. Thankfully, we had a quite broad range of undergraduate students who participated, 60 subjects that we ran, 18 to 22, all, if we can, I don't like this word, but I'll use it for its associations, races, all ethnicities, all genders. These were things that we were not necessarily trying to bar, but rather open up for inclusion. And we're still actually running analyses of, as you may know, with work life, other things come up and you have a lot of other things that you have to do. So there's a lot of intricacies in the data, and I'm trying to figure out how to analyze a lot of that things at the same time. Anyways, music, social engagement, empathy. cultural anthropology, biology. All of these things have to do with being human. All of these things have to do with experiences that we have, that we share. And I'm really, really interested in exploring more of those details as I go out with my dissertation work. Would you like this microphone?
Sure. Okay. Oh, thank you. Hello. So my name is Sam Moss, and I work at UF Health Shands in the Arts and Medicine program. And I'm currently the service learning coordinator, so essentially I am a volunteer coordinator, and I also help place our practicum students within the hospital and also within the community. I've been singing forever. I've been in a whole bunch of bands, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm very proud of the work that I do at Shands in my current role, and also what I've done in the past, which is singing for patients at the bedside. It's just, whenever I get in a funk, whenever the volunteer thing is taking over my work, and I don't have any time to do bedside visits, I'm like, God, why am I so irritable? Why am I so mad? I'm like, oh, I haven't been able to sing for anybody in like 3 months. So I'm really proud of that, seeing the effects, in real time that it has on people, and I'm proud of what it does for me as well. In the future, just selfishly, I'm looking forward to learning how to play the piano.
Yes.
Oh wait, I guess.
That is incredible. Wow.
Okay.
You know me, I'm Alia Sharrief. I performed yesterday at Frank 2020. No, just like I had to wake it up somehow. My name is Alia Sharrief. I am a hip hop artist. I'm also a hip hop teacher. I conduct a lot of different classes around the states from elementary school, boys and girls, to college, and we learn how to rap. We learn what the principles are of rap. We do the history of hip hop. Where did it come from? I definitely am in my own music as well. I've had several projects dropped. You guys can all hit me up online, social media, Alia Sharrief, and check out my catalog. I do work with a collective I started called the Hijabi Chronicles, which is also based in hip hop, studying hip hop and the roots, because when you get to the core of the art and the meaning of what it was and what it started and what it was before it was called hip hop, you really see that healing that we're gonna get to, and the meaning and the movement of it. So I just, when I introduce myself, what are you? Who do you do? I'm music. I'm a product of just my ancestors singing and the people that came before me with the same narrative of human rights, and how do we liberate our people through what they're hearing instead of keeping them in prison with material, money, sex, drugs, violence. And that's what music has turned into, but that's not what it was when it started. So, I always go back to that healthy branch off the tree, because it's a big tree of music, but you got to make sure you're on the right branches, because some of them fall and you will get hurt. But yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm gonna jump right into this and ask you, Alia. So I was wondering, how has music impacted you? How would you say that music has impacted you on a personal basis with healing, in terms of healing?
Starting deep. Okay. For me personally, I would say the story that first came up to me with music that really changed my life and really had me thinking was during the time of enslavement. Now, we know the stories of Harriet Tubman and what happened in that time, but we don't really put emphasis on the freedom songs and what those songs were doing in that time. And when you have songs like Wade in the Water, while people that are enslaving you just think you're over here singing and entertaining yourself, and you're actually crossing messages of how can you get free. So to me, what was the question? Sorry.
That is. Yeah, we're about to go into it. You're right. We're going into it. So so the question is really what I want to dive into is how has music played a role in your life in terms of your own personal healing? And I think you're getting into that.
Yeah, See, I was. There you go. Yeah, so that definitely played a role into my life because it put into the perspective, like, wow, music is not just something to play with. It can actually change the entire generation. I mean, I know you guys have your songs, your go-to songs that if you're in a certain kind of mood, whether it be happy, sad, mad, whatever, it's like, this is the song I'm gonna play. I could play my songs for you as a whole. I got different playlists for every single mood I have, but you know, there's something just powerful that can be brought to you with certain songs. So for me, when I first realized music was important to me and how it impacted me was just knowing that people literally escaped being enslaved by codes in songs. So that helped me be like, okay, I have to put a deeper message in my music than just, you know, to be playing around out here, if that answers your question.
Oh, whichever, sure. Does it reach? Okay, so how music heals me personally is the question, essentially. Well, I guess, I mean, I can go on about it on a day-to-day basis. So, lovely. This is healing me right now. Faith and majesty. So, for example, today, I was very nervous about this. I've never done a panel before. And my coworker said, hey, do you want to go do some visits? And I said, yes, please. And it went away. My nerves went away for that whole 2 hours. Of course, when I stopped, I got nervous again. But you know, it helps when I'm in it. It helps with my nerves. There was a period of time where, you know, I was feeling really low and really blue when I was in Gainesville, and I didn't know what to do. I'm from here, so I was back here. I didn't know what to do with my life. And my music family, you know, rallied around me and made me feel important and special. You know, not over the top, but special enough. Just made me feel valued. So my contribution and hearing that validated really helped me on the healing process. You know, I think music tends to speak really clearly to people, like you were saying. You know, when you're in a certain mood, you have your specific songs you want to listen to. You know, when I was going through a heartbreak or something, there was one specific song, what was it? Silver Springs by Fleetwood Mac. And I'm like, that's me right now. There's somebody else out there who feels exactly what I'm feeling. I'm not alone. Somebody, you know, it happens all the time. I can get through this. If they got through it, I can get through it too. So just listening intently to lyrics, really sinking into it, that really helps me. And then, like I said, seeing the effects of music at the hospital for people who are you know, in such an awful, weird space in life, and seeing them be able to light up with music heals me as well.
So I think a common thread that we've experienced thus far is it's quite complicated to explain what exactly it is that music does to heal us. But I think that we all share something. And for me, that's this idea of embodying something with music, expressing something with music. We use it as a tool to get through a time that is tough. We write lyrics to it, we write melodies to it, we have different moods, we have different feelings. There's so many emotions tied up with it. Thanks, Frank, for the theme this year about emotion. Personally, there's two experiences that I can really reflect upon with music and healing. The first is after I finished undergrad, I did something quite drastic and moved to Kenya. I lived there for 2 years in Nairobi. It was random, and I'm still kind of processing exactly what that means and what I did with that time there. But it really opened me up to what it means to be a human being. I hadn't experienced something that radical in my life, ever. And my mom's an international gender scientist, and she's been to every continent except for Antarctica. So the stories that I've had from her life have really shaped my own. But doing something myself as drastic as moving to East Africa after living in, you know, Caucasian America for the majority of my life really opened my mind to what it means to live in a place that is so inequitable, and there's so much diversity in the experiences that everybody has. And so listening to the music in particular was an eye-opening and ear-opening and consciousness-opening experience. I really felt a lot from the rhythms, from the melodies, from the song constructions, from the lyrics, from the experiences that people expressed through their music there. And it's quite diverse. Alia, you were talking a little bit about the history of our ancestors as the, I suppose, human species. And East Africa definitely has a lot to say about the evolution of our species. And I think a lot of folks go there on a journey in order to understand some of those things. So tying into now my second example, my father passed from frontotemporal dementia in 2016. And I'm still sort of sorting through a lot of the details there, particularly familially. My brother and I are still kind of sorting out some of the details as to how to interact with my mother at this point, because according to him, she made some relatively rash decisions in terms of how to interact with him towards the later stages of his disease process. Anyways, he always wanted to live in Kenya. And so it was kind of an interesting experience moving there. And then my mom came across, we all ended up living there while he was going through this disease process. And it was just confusing. I mean, especially since I was a young man, and I mean, I'm still a young man, but it's just confusing trying to sort out a lot of details in a new space, in a new environment, with an individual that is causing a lot of turmoil in the family for unknown reasons at that time. He's now passed. We understand a lot of the details as to what was going on, but music for him was a way for him to interact with his environment while he didn't know how to express it through language. And I think that is the one element that I hope we explore today in terms of healing and trauma, as you mentioned earlier, that we can always connect with our environment through music, even if it's just through listening, not necessarily through production or music making, some participatory element that allows us to sort through some of the emotions that are tied to that trauma, and how the healing process over time can be explored in a way that is creative, that is unbounded, that is free. And oftentimes, at least for me, because I'm not the most eloquent individual with words, that is the way that I really connect with some of the traumas that I'm still sort of dealing with, this healing process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you hit on I think all of you are hitting on some themes here that we can all agree upon our experience when we listen to music, which is like, have y'all ever been to like your favorite band and been in the crowd and just like everything melts away? And I mean, honestly, like if you're really listening, like you won't be able to tell the difference between yourself and the rest of the world. This connection. And I think that, I mean, people say that that's like the basis of religion or spirituality, is like an outside of yourself feeling, a connection to outside of yourself. I know with me, for healing, like you said, with dealing with grief, the connection to emotions, I just thought of a time when I was in college dealing with some grief, and friends were like partying in the living room, and I was in my bedroom listening to James Taylor, like crying, just like bawling. But yeah, that release of emotions is really cool too. Yeah. So like, isn't that crazy though? Because right now, you can just hear that bass coming through. And we can all feel that. And simply playing a note or a chord or singing words, it's pretty simple, actually. It's really weird that it can do something that magical to us. It's very, very strange. So I wanted to know if you have any scientific insight into this. don't, basically my question is with your studies, have you found any information to link these things that could be useful for us?
Sure. So you mentioned about feeling the bass, and a research question that I hope to somehow propose some data to and maybe some response to is what are the mechanisms behind that? And one thing that I can speak to with the experience that I've had from my master's thesis work is that we have this thing called the autonomic nervous system. And I'm sure you guys are aware of that based upon a reference to the fight-flight mode or the rest-digest mode. And so fight-flight is this sympathetic nervous system, and rest-digest is this parasympathetic nervous system. And there's ways to measure that, and there's ways to explain that scientifically. There's all kinds of theories about that. There's debates about that. There's all kinds of technology used to explain those situations. And that mechanism, the autonomic nervous system, also relates into our consciousness. It influences our consciousness. Each individual has a different experience of that, but everybody has this immediate fear response, or this kind of, like, oh my God, that feels so good, I'm gonna relax response. And as we know from certain tempos in music, certain modes in music, they make us feel a certain way. Well, that relationship between our conscious behaviors and our autonomic behaviors through music is very much related to what it is that those tempos and those modes and those rhythms and things are doing to that relationship. Now, everybody has their own experience with that, right? You have cultural differences, you have gender differences, you have age differences, you have personality differences, baseline things that might not necessarily change throughout the process of interacting with that music. However, we also know from relatively recent studies actually out of Harvard that there's some sort of form-function relationship, form being like a song for dance, or a song for a lullaby, or a song for some sort of a ritual experience, maybe going to church, or maybe something for a funeral ceremony, that the form of that relates to the function. So if you listen to somebody singing in a language that you don't necessarily understand, you might still be able to understand the qualities, the tempo, the mode, the rhythms. Now, we have some mechanisms in us that allow us to do that, and that relates back to what you were referring to earlier, Alia, about these ancestor things. There's something about how we've developed our musicality. Our species has the ability to be musical that then elicits the possibility for all these other associations. People using music for rituals, people using music for dance, for having fun at a party, whatever. And that bypasses language, There's all kinds of associations in the brain between how we process language and how we process elements in music, but that doesn't necessarily remove us from this much deeper sense of what music is communicating, feeling the bass. Initially, I think it's fair to make this statement. We have a fear response from that bass. Think about this think about this evolutionarily. What other things around us make deep sounds? I'll give an example if you don't not necessarily know, but predators. In the jungle, man, if y'all are about to get eaten, it's something deep that's making that sound, and you better be ready to run. Right? Landslides, okay? Right? And if a bus goes by initially, it's like, oh my God, or if the plane's going over, you look up to see it. There's all these deeper sounds that initially have a sympathetic nervous system response that you have to be prepared to defend yourself from. Now, how that transitions into some sort of a parasympathetic thing is because consciously we say to ourselves, oh, okay, it's just the bus, it's no problem. Oh, it's just a plane, whatever. But if it was like a dog that barked at you, you're like, okay, I'm gonna stay away because that dog is trying to defend itself. Anyways, these are musical associations. It's a sound response that we're associating with our physical action.
Right.
So there's some brief overview of some musical
totally.
ideas.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Sam, if you want to add on.
One of the interesting things is I was actually hired initially as a musician in residence at Arts and Medicine for a study in the emergency department, and it was trying to determine if live preferential music had any effect on narcotic pain medication. And so we're currently, I think we finished phase 3, and I think we're going to do another phase. So results are inconclusive at this point, but that kind of goes back to the preference and how different music, you know, there's not one blanket type of music that will heal people, but that was one of the really important things that we talked about when starting the study, was like, well, they have to be able to choose what they want to hear, you know. One person is going to love Dolly Parton, the other person's going to hate Dolly Parton. So they have to be able to advocate for themselves, because maybe somebody broke up with them through a Dolly Parton song. They don't want to hear that. There was one time I started singing Crazy by Patsy Cline for a patient who specifically requested it. And then all of a sudden she realized, oh, these lyrics, I don't want to listen to this. So she was like, no, no, no. It's very hard to hear that when you're in the middle of singing. But you know, so that's kind of a really cool study, and I hope that we get some interesting, conclusive evidence and results from that. It's pretty cool.
Totally. Absolutely.
See, I'm not a doctor, and I ain't gone to school for it, but
Me neither.
I just wanted to.
I don't read the results.
I got you, girl. No, but one thing that I just want to throw in there when you talk about the power of music and like, oh my gosh, it came from aliens, lightweight, that's what it seems like. But one thing that I've been studying recently is the frequencies, if anybody knows about that. But the frequencies of music, there are actually producers who know which frequencies get certain emotion. So there's things that they can put in a frequency in your beat to make someone sad or to make someone energized. So I just been paying attention to that and making sure, like, even for all you listening to music, like, don't put yourself in a slump all of a sudden because a frequency came on and it wasn't matching. Like, for an example, I was in a really high spirit yesterday before my talk. I wanted to make sure I was up. And, you know, one of the first songs I put on, oh, I'm a single ladies, oh, I'm a single ladies. And I'm just in the hotel, you know, having fun. And then, you know, it was on an automatic playlist. So then her next song, Beyonce, you know, if I were a boy, I was like, this ain't where I need to be. Let's go, girl. So get me body. So we have to get back up, you know. So just knowing, like, okay, there's different moods. People are expressing different feelings, but there are also people that purposely are able to put certain things in music to mess with your and play with your and, you know, inspire your emotions. So I've been trying to study that recently and put that in my own music. Just wanted to add that if you guys want to study some frequencies.
Yes. Absolutely. That stuff is crazy. We've just started getting into that as well, playing music for yoga classes and playing stuff for when it's just crazy. It's crazy. But anyways, so we don't have too much time left. I'm going to ask one more big question here, because I think we've hit really hard on the personal healing, but the hardest part to address is this idea of community healing. And when I talk about community healing, it's hard to explain, but what I mean is healing over the traumas that we need to heal over together. And I wonder if this is a pathway for personal change, for personal healing. Is music also what we should be turning to as a way for communal healing? And I'm wondering, I'd like to ask Alia if you have any experience in that in the past. I know I've seen some cool stuff of you being involved in social movements and stuff through your music. So if you've personally experienced music as a pathway to community healing, or if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a good question. I do think I have had experience with it. For instance, Bob Marley has a song, and I think it was one of the most, like, they voted what is one of the most impactful songs of our generation. And like One Love was up there, and Get Up, Stand Up, like all these songs. So one day I was listening to Bob Marley cleaning up the house, and he had a song about Zimbabwe. And in the song, he's like, soon we'll find out who is the real revolutionary. So I was like, oh, okay, I gotta do something with that. Who is the real revolutionary? Who is the real? Who ready? Who ready? We was born to be ready. Put your fist up. Tell them you the real revolutionary. So I came up with my own formula, but what I noticed when I would go to protests and I would go to community events and when I performed at the Women's March, like that song really did something. Raising your fist and saying you were ready for the revolution, it gives people a certain courage and a certain strength. So I personally got to witness that. I think songs that are in that trail are the same kind of songs when you hear what's going on, or by Sam Cooke. What is this song? The Change song. It's been a long. And these songs we go to when it's really like we have to look at society, like what's going on in society. I mean, if you guys have any songs, you could throw them out there. Those are the two first songs I thought about when we think about how can we reflect, how can we really think about how deep this goes. See? Yep. Give peace a chance. You know what I'm saying? So we get behind these banners as society, like as humans, as humanitarians. We have these songs that really push us to the next level. If you want to go to hip hop wise, you had Fight the Power. Fight the powers that be. And you really have people up there like, like they're serious with it, you know what I mean? And then you have, more of a song where you had F the police coming straight from the underground. But people were really feeling that. And now it's transitioned to we gonna be all right. You know what I'm saying? And that's what they had for our song yesterday with the Pride. And I couldn't help but come out and be like, hey, we is gonna be all right. So, I've definitely seen it. I think we all see it. We just have to pay attention to it. And when we notice those freedom songs and we notice those songs that are really like, they're timeless. They speak to our generation. I'm thinking We Gonna Be All Right as the, one of the newer ones, but I'm sure there's some newer ones we could all, I don't know if anybody has any that. Yes, the one, people killing, people dying. Yeah, that's one of them. That is exactly. So yeah, I think when the music does put forth, when it comes down to changing society, helping society, healing society, there are songs out there, and they always, they blow up because we need them. That's my spiel for right now.
That's a good spiel. Well,
double mic.
I already have one. I was about to double mic it. That would have been good. Yeah. That's a great response. So, so I'm kind of thinking of it on more of a micro scale too. Just being in a band or a community orchestra or a community chorus or something like that. Doing events at the downtown plaza that's free and open to the public, getting people together who might not interact with each other on a regular basis, but for the purpose of music or for dance or something like that is pretty incredible. You get in a room or a space with people who all know the same song that you would never expect. It's like, what is that? The Sweet Caroline, bum bum. I didn't know that everybody knew that song, but apparently everybody does. But everybody comes in on the bum 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 part, and then everyone's like, "What? We're all singing together. How incredible is this?" So, yeah. I mean, as far as that goes, I think it just has such a wonderful capability of syncing people up, whether it be recorded music or live music. Recorded music, obviously, because people know what to expect, when to expect. They can sing along to it, and it just kind of breaks down barriers. I always go back to hurricanes. When a hurricane is coming and everybody is flocking to Publix or Wards to get like bottled water and toilet paper or something and canned goods, it's like it's a shitty thing that's about to happen, but it's so unifying. And I feel like that kind of, everyone's like, did you get your water yet? Did you get, do you have your batteries? So So it's silly, but it is like, you know, you don't think about it, but it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of exciting. Not that, like I said, not that hurricanes are exciting, but sometimes I get that same feeling about music events and how they like draw people in. And it's like, we all know this song together. And even smaller scale, you know, if you're in a band with people, there's something so wonderful about like having that first time that it clicks, you know, all the voices are locking in together. You have this sense of accomplishment. Everyone's working towards the same thing. You're working towards a show or a play or something like that. And the focus becomes the music, not what we look like or what we do. I think about this all the time at the hospital, how we go into rooms not knowing anything about these people, what they look like, sometimes we know how old they are, but really nothing, where they live, how much money they have. They're in a gown. We don't know anything about them. And there's something so wonderful about asking them what they want to hear. Sometimes it's a huge surprise. It just makes me realize how much more in common we have with each other than we think. You know, it's so easy to walk into a room and say, I'll bet you like bluegrass. And then they say, no, I really love Aretha Franklin. Can you play some Aretha Franklin? It's like, yes, I'm loving this. So anyway, I hope that was relevant.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm reflecting upon how important it is to appreciate one another's differences in order to find some common similarity by which to heal from. And community is a very complicated subject if we were to look at it academically or in a research context. So how do we facilitate healing within community at large? I would imagine one lifetime can't necessarily address that in a very comprehensive way. However, we can address the idea that community is very complicated, and if we each put our own fingers into parts of those communities, then we can all come together in a space like this and figure out some way to work together towards this much broader idea of community as a whole, and all the different components that go into healing those various pieces towards that whole. And music, as we've been discussing today, has all of these possibilities as a means by which to address those spokes in the center towards this larger ring of community. And I mean, speaking, I guess, more from this science idea, we really do have so many things in common with one another. But the narrative today seems to be much more about the differences. And I disagree with that. If there's one thing that I would endeavor to do in the work that I'm doing, it's to figure out a way to use music to communicate these similarities. Maybe not necessarily through lyrics, maybe not necessarily through song, but through expression. I think that's one thing that we can all feel from music, is that the people on stage or the recording that's there or ourselves as we're doing it, we're sort of ridding ourselves of some sort of skin, like a reptile or something like that, and then finding a new birth from the following day or from that evening through some sort of emotive process that we need to exude, and then we find some new skin, some new breath, some new light, some new food, some new emotion that we need. And for me, that is healing, because that's being, that's becoming, that's time passing. That's what it means to be human. It's kind of what it means to be on Earth. So I think that if we can do that as communities, then we'll find a way to do that as community, and everybody can feel something from that, from those things.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to say one thing. You can be inspired so quickly by other people with music, and listening to you speak. I just heard that song. Keep on waiting, waiting for the world to change. So while you talking, waiting. Yes, while you talk, I'm like, let's go. Like, okay. Yeah, that's all I want.
Yeah, okay.
I was promised a song at some point during this.
We did talk about doing a jam session. I got my fiddle over here. All right,
Sweet.
All right, so I have some random ideas that I was thinking about earlier today, and maybe maybe it'll make some sense, you know, with all these mechanistic possibilities that we've been talking about today.
Right.
All right, so
Oh, you gotta sing. Okay, yeah, you have to sing too.
oh yeah, well then take
So
this
you should
microphone.
start with the singing and then
I'll just play as loud as I can.
No, I'll just be a nice washover thing.
Grace us, grace us.
All right. So I'm gonna try and do like a hip hop kind of groove on the violin, and we'll see how it goes. All right. But I was thinking about some beats earlier today, so maybe it'll work out a little bit.
Who ready? Who ready? Hey, hey. I try not to be something to juggle, but it's a struggle, cause I'ma give up before I go through the trouble. Go through the trouble. Ha, yeah, look. And the world keeps spinning, so many circles, but I ain't tryna get in them. Would love to start, but they won't let me finish. Ha, broken hearts, new beginnings, yeah. No matter how no matter how I try, I still have these broken dreams. Money determines everything around me. Around me, yeah, around me. Around me, hey, hey. I try not to be something to juggle, but it's a struggle, cause I'ma give up before I go through the trouble. Living life on a double, living life on a hustle, striving the bubble out while I'm fighting the public girl in a erupted. Think she got issues, sentimentally vicious. Yeah. That was all freestyle, y'all. Yes. Can we start a band? What's the name of our band? You guys can name us.
The band is called Changeville.
Let's take a bow together, guys. I think we deserve it.
Thank you, Connie.
Thank you.